Okay, sure. So let's do one thing. There's quite a bit of Maven already left. I think I had sent out details, but it doesn't look like it is here. But if needed, let's capture that a little bit. Profiles, dependency management, settings, .xml, settings, security.xml. There is plugins that I want to talk about. Some of them are Surefire, Maven plugin, Maven dependency plugin.
Yeah, Samir, can we discuss about distribution management?
Yes, correct. Yeah, so you want to talk about it now and then just finish it off, or?
Yeah, can you please give the overview? What is the distribution management?
Sure. So each one of them, I'll give you an overview over here.
Okay.
What
okay.
it is.
Okay.
EPOM and BOM also.
Yes, EPOM and BOM would be okay. Let's talk about profiles first. Anything what I've mentioned over here, right? I mean, the easiest thing that you could also do by yourself is just search for Maven profiles. Before I go there, what I want to tell you is what is the problem that we're trying to solve with profiles, right? There are some configuration that you might want to apply only in certain conditions. Okay. For example, let's say, let's take very simple. One profile is for, let's say, Java 6 or Java 8, and the other profile is for Java 8 and above. Okay. So what you could do is you could create two profiles in Maven. One, when you pass a profile, which is Java 6, one of the profile will get executed. And when you pass Java 11 or Java 16 or whatever it is, the other profile will get activated. So basically, it's a conditional execution. That's what it means. And you'll ask me, what is a profile, right? I mean, you said profile will get executed. What is a profile? Profile could be anything. You can wrap anything inside a profile. So I will show you over here a very quick demo. If you look here, so there are several things for activation. Basically, you can activate by JDK version, which version it starts with, and what's the flexible version. So basically, it's following honest version 1.3, 1.4, and 1.5. So these are basically boundaries, right? This is included, 1.6 is not included. That's what it means. That's the convention. You can do it by OS. The most important one that I have seen is doing it by property. Okay, so we'll do by all if needed, but at least we'll do by one of them to start with. So let's go ahead and add profiles in our project. And the thing is, I'm working on my Office system. I'll have to get everything, which I wouldn't prefer to do usually, but just as an exception, let's do it. Clone. Let's go here. Okay, and the second one is plugin test, right? Let me know if you want me to stop or go slow somewhere, okay? This is the exact same exercise we had done earlier, but since it's a different laptop I'm on, I'm just trying to clone it again and install the Maven plugin. Okay, and then dot hello Maven plugin test. And then I'll try to do Maven clean package. So dependency is duplicate. So let me go ahead and remove that duplicate which we had added as a test. All right. And now let's do a Maven clean package. Okay, that's successful. Now let's go and open this up in Visual Studio Code. And open up the POM file. What I want to do is I want to add, let's say, these dependencies in a profile. Okay. So if you look at the configuration here for profile, it starts with profiles, profile, and then there's the activation section, right? I will just copy this from here. I'll put up the URL for you over here. That's the URL, but you can search for Maven profiles, you should get it. I will go in here, add the profiles. Add the profiles over here and control case to delete a line. I'm going to pick up this dependencies from here. Maybe I'll clean this up from here, control shift K. Copy this from here and add this over here. Okay, so I've just moved this under this particular profile, and this profile will be activated when I say, let's say, dependency, or for short, let's call it as DEP. If I pass a property called DEP, this profile should get activated. That's what the whole idea is. And I'll show you for all the others also how else we can wrap it up. But let's take this as a simple example. I'll save this and I'll go back here and I'll say Maven clean package. I'm hoping JUnit should not show up. See the test of thing because I have not added a dependency of JUnit. Okay. Now what I will do is I will minus D. What was that? DEP. You see that? Now it didn't fail. On the first instance, it failed because I'm explicitly saying over here, this profile should be activated only when somebody passes me a property called DEP. Okay, if somebody does not pass me a property called DEP, this dependency should not get added. I will stop here for a second before I move forward to ask you if the fundamental concept is clear or not, because otherwise you'll get lost. The perspective or the reason why profile is there. Is that clear or not? It's a conditional, basically. That's what you have to understand. So can somebody volunteer and tell me whether it makes sense so far?
Yes, Samir. So this profile acts as a conditional statement. If you provide any condition, if the condition satisfies, only then the dependency will work.
Correct. Yeah, only then, if the condition is satisfied, only then whatever you put over here will act as if it's been directly added. I can technically pick up this whole build from here, the whole thing from here. Instead of adding it here, I can potentially add another profile over here. If it is not to be applied for all conditions, right? Then I can add it over here, add activation that I need, and then add it inside it like this. Okay, so only when I pass activation, so I haven't passed any activation over here, but I hope you understand what I'm saying.
So here, what's the condition?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to add here. The condition will be whatever you give over here. Let's say anything, you can name it actually. If Samir is passed, then this, you can interrupt that. If you want to negate it, then you can also say this. If Samir is not passed, then do this. Otherwise, don't do this.
Can we use these profiles for any dependency like this?
You can use it for any dependency. You can use it for any plugin. You can use it for any properties. Let me remove all of this now, just for the. You can do it even for properties like this. You can remove dependencies, let's say, or you can keep dependencies also, and you can keep properties also. So these properties will be activated. It's a very good use case I'll give you, right? Let's say most of your users are Java 8 user. Okay. What you'll say is, if not Java 8, then do this. Else, there's another concept called default profile, which I haven't shown you, and I'm going to go there basically. Let's go and see default profiles. So, okay, before I go to default profile, I want to actually make some changes over here. If you've understood this concept, then let me go back to where I was earlier. Okay, let's bring up profiles, brand new over here. You must have noticed how I invoked it right earlier. I passed a -d. -d is basically a property. I remember Rumana had asked me what that -d is. That's basically a system property or a JVM argument. Okay. If DEP is passed, then the profile should get activated. That was the example we saw. Now we will see actual profile. Basically, profile has a minus instead of a -d. If I pass a profile, and I have an ID over here. Let's say that ID is Java 6. Active by default. Okay, and I'll take this from here. I'll put it over here. And instead of Java 6, I'll call this as Java 11, which is active by default. By default, this is the properties that have to be applied. If not, I can add multiple profiles over here. Another I can add for Java 6, or let's say Java 8. And if that is the case, I will change this to 1.8. Don't ask me why it is 1.8 and why it is 11. That's how the convention has been earlier. So 1.11, they thought it's better to go 11. Okay, this is Java 8, and this one will not have active by default. It will not have this. Okay. Just read it. It should kind of make sense to you. What it is saying is there are two profiles. First of all, let's go to the help plugin and let's see what that active profile thing was, right? Or let's say help all profile. Let's look for that first. Let's run that command. So mvn help all profile. Let's see what it does. It is downloading the plugin basically, and then it is coming and saying there are two profiles. One is Java 11 and Java 8. So now you kind of understand about the help plugin that I was talking about. Now you can ask, you saw all the profiles. I want to see only the active profiles. Give me all the active profiles. And profiles need not be only in the parent POM, right? Profile could be in the child POM also somewhere. So it's very difficult for you to go and start finding what are the different profiles by yourself otherwise. That's why you have this active profile. And it should tell us 11 is the active profile. See, Java 11 is the active profile. Now, you can look at other thing also, describe attribute of a plugin, effective form we have already seen, effective settings if you want to see, help evaluate Maven expression given by the user in interactive mode. If you want to evaluate, you can. System, display a list of platform details. Romana, go ahead.
Samir, how did it recognize key 11 is the active profile? Is it taking from Java Home?
No. No. Here.
By true. That's the flag, right?
Yeah. And that's why I didn't delete it over here. I actually commented it out. So if I make this as commented out, and if I run that command, there'll be nothing basically. No active profile. Okay, there are no active profiles. So if I open this up, it will be Java 8 as this one as the active profile.
Right. This answer, there was one question where we had 11 and 17 installed, right? And I was reaching out to you. How do we configure multiple? Right? How do we switch between different versions? And this is the way, I guess.
This would be the way, but the thing is, you should have JDK installed in your local, right? This will be a way when you're giving it to multiple people. And let's say I'm having 11, I will enable 11 profile and start running. But if you're running 8 on your machine, then you'll be passing a profile called Java 8, and then you'll be running.
Right.
Then yes, but I thought your question was how to install multiple versions of Java and then be able to run anyone that you want to run, right?
Yeah, basically switch between if I have multiple versions. That was the initial question that we had when we were struggling with 11 and 17. There was some issue, right?
So if you have multiple versions of Java, right, this will technically not run, right? Because in your command prompt, any one Java will be active at any given time. Either Java 8 or Java 11 will be active. I'll show you that now, actually. First of all, let's go ahead and do a Maven clean package, which is Java 11. Which should work, hopefully. And now let's see if Java 8 works. It doesn't have any dependencies externally, so I would. So Java 8 also works, but let's see if it says anywhere. If I want to see a little more logs, right? What I can do is I can put -x over here. This is very important when you want to basically debug what's going wrong. So now over here, it is still, let's see which version of Java is it using. Tell me if you're able to see somewhere. This is the test basically. Where's the compiler? JDK here, Java C. But where is here? Source is 1.8. It is able to compile with 1.8 when you have Java 11 locally installed. There's a backward compatibility in there. But I'm thinking if we had Java 8 and we were trying to run Java 11, the forward compatibility definitely would not be there. It will fail. But now you trust me, right? It is running on Java 1.8. And now if I don't pass this and do a -x. Oh, -p, have to remove. And if I go back to the compiler plugin here, it is Java 11. You see that?
Because Java 11 is set to
Yeah.
active profile.
Exactly. But coming back to profiles, you're kind of getting an idea of what profiles is, correct? And profile activation can be done in multiple ways. One way is by the profile ID itself. We saw that. The other way we saw it is by property, right? By property and by just property, basically, just a key. But if you want by property key and the value, then this is the way to do it. So you give the key and the value. If you want to say not value, for example, key is this, but the value is not true, then this is the way to do it. If you have to say the value itself, the key itself does not exist, the key itself is not debug, then activate this. The key is debug, then activate this. You can say OS, if you want the OS, the name to be Windows XP, family Windows or whatever, right? Architecture is x86 or 64. You're going to do this. Again, I'm not going into the depth of it because not many people really use it. There are some plugins that do not work on some architecture. So that's the time we have to actually pass a specific architecture to run it. It's only one time in my life I've seen this was needed. I'm not going in detail. But if you ever have to get into that situation, you should know that we have this option to do as part of profiles. If you want to run it only for JDK 1.4, so the way we did it was a different way, right? Passing ID, but there's a JDK property that is available for you if you have to use it. And the way you do it is when I do a Java home, Java version, here, see what they're saying. Okay, the following configuration will trigger the profile when the JDK's version start with 1.4. If it starts with 1.4, this one here, which starts with 1.4, right? 0_8, whatever it is. But if it's 1.4, then it will be. In our case, we will be giving it as 11 because we do not have any minor. Okay. Anyway, I don't want to spend a lot of time looking at this, but I hope when you look at profiles, you'll be able to basically understand. Another thing basically, which is called active profile, in your settings.xml file. For example, if you create your profile over here and I don't set any active profiles, I remove this, let's say. By default, what will happen is when I run Maven clean package, none of them will get executed. If I don't pass Java 11 or Java 8, none of them will get executed. But you want them to be executed, one of them at least, and you don't want to control it from here. There's a possibility that you could actually define your profile, active profile in a settings file. And you know where the settings file is, right? The settings file is C.
You just logged in.
M2 home.
Yeah, I might not have it because this is my office laptop, right? Usually I copy my settings.xml from Maven conf folder and put it up over here. And in that particular file, in this particular file over here, you can copy the profile and put the active profile as Java 11. Even then it will work. Okay, try it out on your system. If it does not work, let me know. I don't want to spend time right now on this because we have other things to do here, right? So files, any question? I'll hold on for a second to see if you guys have any questions here. Profiles.
Put the profiles in settings.xml file, then Again, do we need to put it in the, so we don't need to put it in the pom.xml file?
No, we did not put the profile in settings.xml file. We just put
Okay.
profile in settings.xml file. So your profile is still in your pom.xml file, but from the settings.xml file, instead of passing -p explicitly like this, you can pass more than one profile basically, if you have more than one profile to be activated. Okay. Instead of passing it here, you can very well pass it over here, and you can add active profile parameters multiple time over here, which is as good as this. So you can have profile 1, profile 2, profile 3, 3 active profiles. Does that make sense, or is it not clear?
Clear.
Is it clear?
Yeah, clear.
Janya, is it clear?
Yeah, clear, Samir.
Okay. Let's move forward. Let's look at dependencies. I think we've already seen dependencies, which is here. These are dependencies over here, right? Now, what is dependency basically? Dependencies is like a place for you to tell what are the dependencies that are required for you to compile your classes. And it's not like you'll randomly pick up something and put it over here, right? When you work with Java, you're going to add a Java file over here, correct? And let's say if I want to use Spring, okay, Spring is going to have some kind of import, correct? When I work with. And this is something that you don't really have to worry about. And that's why I don't want to go too much into the depth of it. But if you want to go in the depth, please let me know, because I definitely can write Java code and I can show you. But I don't want to confuse you to a level where you start hating DevOps right now. We will come to it at the right time, okay? But what you need to know is what dependencies we put over here is a dependency to get your code executed. For example, if you see in the test over here, there is this org JUnit test. This org JUnit test comes from the JUnit dependency. As soon as I comment this out and I try to run, your test will fail and the whole build will fail. Okay. So that's dependencies, and you can add n number of dependencies. And I believe last time I also talked about transitive dependencies. So if you go to, let's say, Spring Web MVC Maven repo, and if you go here and click one of the versions, you will just have to add dependency in your project, okay, in that section basically over here. But as soon as you add that, these are the dependencies that will automatically be pulled. So that is what is called transitive dependencies. AOP, let me see, Spring Web, let's say, will get another sets of dependencies it might require. So you see here, beans and core. This is transitive dependency of Spring Web. So it will basically, it's like a B tree or a tree basically. First dependency has dependency on 4. One of the 4 dependencies has another dependency on 4. Then one of them has dependency on 2, so on and so forth, right? Technically, Maven will automatically resolve all the dependencies and download everything. If you don't trust me, just add the Spring Web MVC dependency. Even if your project does not use it, just add this dependency over here in your form file over here. Just add it. I'm not going to add it because I don't want to delete my local repository, and then go to your local M2 repository and delete this whole folder, and then do a Maven clean package. And when you look inside, you will see that it will bring down all the transitive dependencies that you're seeing over here. It will bring down ORG Spring Framework, Spring UOP, Beans, Context, Core, Expression, Web, and maybe some more. Transitive dependencies, does that make sense so far? And transitive dependencies is one of the whole reason why people love Maven, okay? What AND does not give. AND IVY gives, which was produced later, but AND by default does not give that dependency management. All right, many a times I've seen experienced guys telling me they don't know what's the difference between dependencies and dependency management. Okay, and this dependency management is very important for understanding EPOM, and at least EBOM. bill of material. So I will stop for a second over here and I'll ask you, whatever I said about dependencies, is that clear?
Yes, clear.
Yes.
Now, the primary difference between dependencies and dependency management, okay, is I will copy this part from here to here. I know we wanted to do something else today, all of this, but that's fine. I think you have to understand this also. So if I just wrap this under dependency management, okay. And now if I try to go and run Maven clean package, you'll see there's some problem. See, none of them are running basically. Why? Why is it not running? I already have JUnit over here, right? But why is it not running? The reason it's not running is, and see something that I'm doing very, very important, okay? I'm getting rid of the version number over here. Now, if I go and run it, it works. Notice it brought nothing of Spring over here, okay? Although Spring is defined over here, it didn't bring anything. And I had intentionally done this because dependency management is like a library, okay? You can add n number of dependencies over here, and whatever you need from it, that's what you use in dependencies. When you look at it from a parent POM perspective, this might not at all make sense to you because you would say, I could have directly added dependency and a version. Why are you making me add a dependency management and add a dependencies, right? Obviously. But if we are working with a multi-module project, if there were more than one module, right? Right now we don't have it here, but the other examples that we have seen, we have multi-modules, okay? In a multi-module project, what you would do is you'll define the dependency management with all possible dependency versions that any of the child module uses in the parent POM. And in the child POM, they would only use the dependencies by defining the group ID and artifact ID. Just because there's a scope, I'm adding it over here, but technically this also is not required because we've already defined it over here, okay? But it doesn't hurt. So the beauty of this is, if you have to ever change a version, you don't have to go through, especially for Connect, you've seen, right? You have 300 plus modules. You don't have to go through each and every 300 plus modules to change the version. Recently, I was asked, before I left FIS, I was asked to upgrade from JDK 8 to JDK 11. Yeah, JDK 11. That was what was the last project that I worked on. And it was the simplest for me to do. Okay, it wasn't very simple practically, but it was comparatively simpler because all the dependent version that I had to update, I had to just update in one place and all the projects would automatically get it out of the virtue of EBOM, which is on a similar ground. If you understand this concept, I will talk about EBOM now. You'll completely understand that. First of all, let me stop again. Do you understand the difference between dependency management and dependencies? If you do, can you please explain it?
I mean, question, if dependency management makes sense in a multi-module project, so this particular section, dependency management, would it sit here or in the super or parent POM?
In our case, this is a parent POM because we don't have any modules.
Yeah,
if there were modules, they would have been here.
Right.
Dependency management belongs here. Dependencies technically will not belong here because in a multi-module project, this packaging will be of type POM. Okay, so there would not be any SRC or whatever inside it. There will be multiple folders. Each one of them will be a module.
Got it.
Yeah. All right, Jyoti or Mansa or Sojanya. Dependency management and dependencies. The most critical part to notice over here is there is no version number. The version number is being managed from here. So if I just change the version number over here, every place where the dependency is being used from this level downward, everybody will get dependency automatically.
So do we need to maintain these two sections, dependency management and dependencies?
If you're doing it in a single project like this, yes, but in a single project like this, having a dependency management does not make sense at all. Only when you have a multi-module project.
Let us assume this is a multi-module project.
Mhm. If it is a multi-module project, then there will be only dependency management in the parent form. The dependencies will be defined in the individual modules. Make sense? No?
Clear.
No, be clear, because if you don't understand this, you will not understand the enterprise bill of material. We had a multi-module project, right? Didn't we? Was it this one? Yeah, you see this? There are multi-module projects. In a project like this, if there's a dependency being used in all of them, for example, well, this is not even using any dependency, but assume this was using a dependency, and the form file inside this was also using a dependency, and the form file inside this was also using a dependency. And now each one of them were managing their version in their own form file. Anytime you had to append and assume there's a dependency that is common between two of them. This guy also is using one dependency, this guy also is using a dependency, but he's using a different version, he's using a different version. Now, when you added a dependency management over here and you remove version number from all of them, all of your dependencies are being managed from here. So nobody has to redefine the version number anywhere. That way, it becomes very easy for you to manage your version for your dependencies from a single place. So this becomes a bill of material. This is where all of your version dependencies are there. Still, you don't understand. If you don't, then I will clone this and explain a little more.
Yeah, clear. So we can manage versions. Apart from versions, does it also helps to manage anything else? Artifact ID?
No. So look at it as a library. Group ID and artifact ID is the ISBN. That is what these guys are redefining again. And based on this, Maven knows this group ID and this artifact ID. I have to use this version. It knows automatically. There's nothing else it is managing. It is only managing dependency. That's why it is dependency management.
Okay, clear.
Okay. All right. Let's do a picture. I have a multi-module project, right? First version is you define the version for the dependency and the version over here in the module itself. Okay. The second model that we saw right now is you have the same one, but what you do is you define the dependency and version under dependency management section. And over here, you just say DIP. Group ID and artifact ID is what DEP is. Okay. This is basically the benefit of having a dependency management section. But what if you have such project like how we have for Connect? Basically, there are multiple duplications or multiple projects basically which are following the same standard. Okay, so let me separate this a little bit out. If you have a model like this, what we do actually is we take this dependency management section from here and put it out. in a POM file of itself. Okay, and each one of them uses it as a bill of material. Not a parent POM, okay? It is not using it as a parent POM. It defines it as a bill of material. So I will quickly show you what I mean by that. Is you take this dependency management, create a simple file. Let's create a simple file over here. And I will go ahead and delete the whole section. Basically, I don't need the build section. I just need the dependency management section. I will keep the Spring MVC there. It should be there. I will delete all of this profile thing. I don't need it. And here, XML tool I don't have. Okay, if you don't have Notepad++, please install it. And then there's XML tool available. Just install that. It's a very good tool. Like it. Yeah. Okay, and it basically allows me to, what is, something is not right. Okay, so I formatted it. I have a dependency management. I don't really need this. Let me remove it. Version, name, and then the packaging is POM. Okay, name is Hello Maven. I'll call it as Enterprise Bill of Material, let's say. Okay, I haven't done much change. You've noticed it, right? Basically what I've done is, as per this picture, I've taken it out from here, and I'm taking it out because I have multiple projects that would want to use it. If I just keep it here, that means only this project can take the benefit of the dependency management. But when I take it out, there's more than one project that can take benefit of the dependency management. Okay, so to install this in my local environment, there is this command called mvn install. Okay, it is the Maven install file, basically. That's the same command. So what I will do is I will open up a command bash over here and Maven install, and there's this goal called install file. Okay, very easy for you. Just copy this install file from here and then Google -d file, -d version, -d group ID. That's what I'm looking for. So if you see here, artifact ID, group ID, and POM file. Okay, so basically what I need is -d POM file. So I'm just copying from here, POM file equals to dot pom.xml -d what group ID, artifact ID I don't need because it's all there inside the POM file. Okay, so I don't need to define any of that, hopefully. Let's see if this works. Let's try it. It is Let's see what is missing. Oh, file for goal. Okay, file, I can give it as the same one, -d file equals to form.xml. So it says it has installed. If it has installed, I should go here and see com Lotus ops enterprise bill of material 1.0.0 snapshot, and here is your enterprise bill of material. Now in my POM file, I'm going to stop for as soon as I'm done here, I will stop. Okay, just give me a second to finish this whole dots and then we'll revisit it. So when we are using enterprise POM, we have to use a dependency management section. And for dependency, the best thing that you can do is you Google for any bill of material. Basically, you can say Spring BOM, Spring Framework Bill of Material. So just go here, copy this dependency instead of just writing it out, right? We can just copy this, paste it over here. Okay, and then instead of this group ID, it will be com dot Lotus ops. This will be enterprise BOM. This will be 1.0.0 snapshot. Type will be POM, scope will be import. And let's go ahead. Well, the dependency will still have to be defined. Because the version is being managed from here, right? It is still getting you the library, but you still have to tell what do you want to use from the library. So this will still be required. So let's go ahead and see if Maven clean package, not this one, sorry, the other one. Let's see if the Maven clean package works. It worked. Okay. I will go a little slow here to explain you what we did. I'll probably also add comments over here. And inside here, I'll put a small file called readme.md. And inside there, I will give you the command that I have used. Okay. Please practice this, because if you don't, it will be very difficult for you to know what you've done. Let me stop here for a second now, and I will ask you if you have any questions. Anybody, any question?
Samir, can you give us a quick summary,
No, I cannot.
please?
Okay. Dependency management we saw. And so I stopped here actually and asked you, did you follow dependency management?
Yes.
Before we use dependency management, we were defining dependencies directly like this with the version number stuck over here, right?
That's right. Yes.
We said that's not a good practice because if you start doing that, you might have multiple modules, each one of them defining the same dependency with different versions.
Yeah,
Okay.
this part I understood, Samir,
Correct.
where you eliminate the version from the module POM file,
Yeah.
and you put it in the dependency management at a
Correct. So
Yeah.
if you followed, that's great. You define the dependencies basically as dependency management. This is a beautiful thing when you're using dependency management only for one repository. What if you start using a similar repositories multiple times?
right.
Now you'll end up having a dependency management here, dependency management here, dependency management somewhere else, right? In each and every repository. And each and every repository's dependency management would define a different version.
So sorry. Zidane.
Okay. What we did was we said instead of each one having their own dependency management and each one defining the versions the way they want, we want to govern it. There has to be a governance body which will take control of what dependencies a project or an organization can use. So they extract it outside, okay, and they manage it from here, and they tell each and every project, if you need to use the dependencies that the organization supports, then please define it using this construct. And that's the construct over here. So almost same dependency. The only thing that is differing here is it is saying type is POM, scope is import.
Oh, sorry. Yes. Yeah. So that is what is called enterprise BOM.
This is called a bill of material. Since we are extracting it at enterprise level, that means the organizational level, that's why we call it as enterprise bill of material.
So the type and the scope both must same. You must provide POM and import.
Correct. But before that, I took this POM, created it using the dependency management, changed the packaging type to POM, and then installed it in my local using this command. If you want to install it in your remote, let me put that command also over here. Here. To put this guy. So no way to make this small. Shit. Anyway, for that you need deploy file, mvn deploy file, and there will be a repo URL, repository ID. Where are we? So in setting file, whatever repo you've specified, that's what you have to define here. And we haven't really looked at setting file yet, but setting file has a section called server, where you can provide the credential, user ID, and the password. And then you'll have the URL. more often than not, you will never use this by yourself. There will be some DevOps architect who will take care of this to define the enterprise form, but it's always good to know how it is done. It is done this way. And then if your settings file is not immediately where your POM file is, or in the default location, you can always mark -s and give the settings.xml file location. Okay, I would not really delve a little deeper into this because we don't have any Nexus or JFrog at the moment. When we get Nexus and JFrog, we potentially will explore how to install it, because only when you see it, you'll realize it. But just for a reference, I'm putting it over here. Okay, any more questions? No? Are you guys done for today? No answers. What happened? You guys can hear me?
Yes, Amir. Yeah. I mean, we can continue if you're up for it, or else we can call it off.
I'm completely open because we've just covered 3 parts today. We haven't really seen a lot. We have to see, well, we have covered EBOM also, so I will take this guy up over here. We have not talked about settings.xml file, settings security file. Plugins is a big topic, so I will not take it. Distribution management, we haven't touched yet. Can we continue if you're not tired? Saujanya and
I'm okay, sir.
Yes, Samir. Yes, Samir, we can continue.
yeah,
Yeah,
I
we
mean,
can continue.
whatever we've talked so far, is that clear? Because otherwise you'll have too much to go and listen to.
So far, it's clear for me.
It's clear.
Okay. So settings file is basically where we put a lot of configuration, right? Configuration like we already saw the active profile, configuration like the server. When we have the remote server and we have to provide the username and password, correct? That's the section that will go. So I will see if I have Maven over here. Installation. Gone. So if you go to settings.xml file over here, it pretty much gives you a skeleton of what it is. So first one, it is if you want to change your default place where the repository is, by default, it is userhome.m2/repository. You have to put this local repository out of the comment, and then change this path to wherever you want to store your local repository. Okay. If you want to try it. I never recommend people to do this, but just as a training, if you want to do it, please go ahead, do it. Interactive mode, we don't have to worry about. Offline, we don't have to worry about. Plugin group, we have already seen when we write our own plugin, by default, Maven only recognizes this plugin as the default plugin, so that you don't have to give the default group IDs of your plugin. You'll have to specify your group ID over here, so that Maven knows if you do not specify the group ID, it can use either this or your group ID that you've defined over here. We have already seen it. If you don't know, the previous session has those details where we talked about how to create plugin. If you go down, if your company has proxies, okay, you cannot go out to the internet directly, but you have to go through a proxy. That's how you define over here. You define your username, password. So Jyoti, for you, somebody would have given you a settings file, or somebody would have shown you. I have actually documented on Confluence how to generate the settings file from JFrog Artifactory. Okay, that one potentially should come with proxy. Okay, so that will have all the proxy details. Does everybody know what a proxy is here? Do you know what a proxy and a reverse proxy is?
No.
No.
Okay, so this is your organization. Okay, this is your laptop. This is the cloud. You cannot, most of the company says you cannot go out to the cloud. Blocked, completely blocked. What they do is they have a single gateway, which they call as a proxy. You have to set up your browser to go through the proxy, and the proxy will let you go out to the cloud. Okay, that's what the proxy is. From internal, organization internal to outside in the cloud. That's what your proxy is. This proxy is. So proxy will have a host name, proxy will have a port. That's what we were configuring over here. So you have a protocol, whether it's HTTP, HTTPS, you'll have a username, you'll have a password, you'll have a host, and you'll have a port. Okay. And non-proxy host is basically if you do anything that's local, you can, or any host name that you don't want to go through proxy, you can define over here that if I use any host name like this, please don't send them over proxy, because I don't have any business to do out in the cloud. It's all local to me. I'm having a server locally installed. It will be all tested over here. So don't try to go out to the box. That's what this non-proxy host meant. Okay, that is proxy. What is reverse proxy then? Reverse proxy is you still have organization. You have a server. You have a server inside the organization. There are people outside the organization. So for the organization, they're out in the cloud. They want to access your system, which is this one. Let me move it a little to the side. They want to access this system. What the company says is, no, you cannot access it. If you have to access it, you have to come via this proxy. And this is where they will have all the security rule, firewall, so on and so forth. And only when they pass, that is when they're going to send it over here. So instead of this one server, potentially behind the scene, they might even have 2 servers or 10 servers. And then they would basically balance the load. And when they do that, that's when we call it as load balancing. These are some terms that you'll be using, you'll be hearing, right? This is called reverse proxy. Just because proxy goes from inside to outside, it's just a reverse of the proxy. That's why it's called reverse proxy. There's nothing that is getting reversed technically. It is just a reverse of the proxy. So it is basically the people who are accessing are not internal, they are external, and they're trying to access something which is internal. Over here, you have people who are sitting internal who are trying to access something from external. Does it make sense? Proxy and reverse proxy?
Yes.
Okay. So when you hear about proxy, reverse proxy, load balancing, firewall rule, you should kind of make sense now a little bit. I haven't really talked a lot about it, but I think I've given you a brief picture about it. Okay, let's move down. This part is a pretty critical part. If you have a specific repo, okay, and we'll talk about that mirror basically over here. If you have a repo, that's probably your remote repository, okay, and to connect to that remote repository, you have to use a user ID and a password. Then that's when you'll be using this server. The ID that we had used in here, the repo ID that we had used here, right, in readme.md, this repository ID. This repository ID is nothing but this ID. If you have given over here deployment repo, instead of this angle bracket, it will be deployment repo. By this, it will know what is the user ID and the password by referring to the setting.xml file, and then it will know where to deploy it by looking at this URL. So if he goes and tries to deploy anything to the URL is going to tell it, give me your authentication. And it would not know what to do with the authentication. As soon as it asks for authentication, it will look at the repo ID, go to a settings file and search for it. If it finds it, it will pick up the user ID and the password and authenticate. Does it make sense? This is a pretty complex logic to explain, but I'm trying to make it as simple as possible for you. So if you go to Bank of America asks you for a user ID and a password, correct?
Yes.
Now, when it asks you for user ID and password, if you remember it, great. If you don't remember it, you go to your notebook or your spreadsheet or a secrets manager somewhere, you pick it up from there and you enter the details, correct? And when you're picking up, you basically have written Bank of America, and next to that you have written the user ID and the password. In the real world, that's what you do, right? That's exactly what this repo ID is. This repo ID is an indicator that for this one, this is the user ID password. If it's this, there's a user ID and a password, so on and so forth. Okay. We haven't come to remote repository yet, so if this does not make sense, it's okay. We'll come back to it again. Mirrors, we've already talked about earlier, but let me talk about it a little more here. You have, I think we talked quite a bit. The local repository and remote repository we talked about. You have a remote repository, okay? And there are tons of other remote repositories out here. Maven Central, Sonatype, Red Hat, so on and so forth. So you do not want your developer to go to each one of those independent repositories. You don't want that. Okay. You don't want him to do that. So what you do basically is you set up a mirror in your settings file saying every call will just go through my remote repository. And in your remote repository, you set up a proxies. So these are called remote proxies to go to this. So if this repository, if I name it as A, B, C, and this is let's say Z, your developers will always go through Z because that's what you've defined in your settings file. How do you define that everybody should go through Z only? How you do it? That is how you do it over here by mirror. You specify your URL where it has to go to, and you define your ID. Mirror of you do star, not external HTTP star, but star. Okay. So all your requests technically go through here. If you're asking for a dependency DEP version 1.0.0, okay, what will happen is it will come to Z. It will ask, do you have the dependency DEP 100? Z will say, no, I don't have, but let me go ask A. A, do you have it? A will say, no, I don't have it. Then it will go to B. B, do you have it? It will say, no, I don't have it. It will go to C. Do you have it? No, I don't have it. When everybody says I don't have it, it will error out and say the version, the dependency that you're trying to search is not existing. Let's take up another style. It comes again to Z. Z says, I don't have it. Let me go to ask A. He says, yes, I have it. It will download from A, cache it in Z, and give this dependency to this guy. He will be happy to move forward. Okay. Next time, a different project comes and asks for DEP 100. Now, since it was cached over here, it will just serve what is cached from here. It will not go and ask A, B, or C. Does that make sense so far?
Yes.
Complicated, but if you're able to map it into your mind, right? Okay, the dependency is not here. So does it need to go every time to A, or is it better to cache it? I would say it'll better to cache. It'll cache it and never go to A again. That same dependency 100. If it's 200, if it does not exist over here, it will go to A, download it, cache it, give it to this guy. Okay. That same thing this guy also does in his local repository, right? It has a local repository. It first looks in local repository. Is it there? Not there. Then it goes to remote. The remote does the same thing. Is it there? Not there. Go over here. Bring it. Give it. As soon as it gets it, this guy also has cached it. This guy also has cached it. So next time when this guy needs it, it will never go to Z. It will always pick it up from its cache. But if there's a new project altogether, it does not have it in the cache. It will go to Z now. It's like a music. Please keep it in your mind as a music. That this is the orchestration that is happening overall. Okay, let's go back here. We saw profiles. The same way how we had done profiles in settings.xml, in form.xml. You can define profiles over here if you want to, although nobody does it. If there is any profile that is enterprise specific, then you can do it over here. If it's project specific, keep it in your form file, and then you'll have active profile. So technically, we have seen the whole settings file and what are the different options, what settings.xml file has. If you want to take a look at it, please take a look at it. you want to talk about anything specific, please come back to me with it. Okay. That covers up settings.xml file. What is setting security.xml file? For setting security, I have to go here. MVN, let's say help. There's a minus EP and minus EMP. If you see it, please let me know. You see this here? So with this over here, with the server section over here, you saw the user ID and the passwords are being stored in a clean text or a clear text. Anybody can come here and take your password from here, right? It is not secured. But if you want to make it secured, what it says is generate a master password first. So master password can be generated using minus EMP. So MVN minus EMP, let's say Samir. It will give me a encrypted master password over here. I can copy this from here. I can go to my, okay, let me copy this settings file from here just for the sake of it. I'll go to C:\users user profile .m2, paste it over here, and then I will paste settings-security.xml here. I will copy, this is my master password, I have to remember that. I will take this from here and put it up into here, but I cannot just paste it like this. I'll have to get the format for it. So for that, you can always go here and say settings-security.xml. Because there's a dot, I'll just wrap it up in double quotes. I'll have to take this section. Again, this I will put it up for you here. And then go back. Take this from here. And replace the older one with the newer encrypted key. So this is a master key. Okay. Now, let's assume that this is my real password. This one is my real password. Instead of putting this real password, I want to put an encrypted password, but when the Maven runs and it looks for the repo ID and ticks the password, it should convert it to a plain text by itself. But anybody sees it, they should see encrypted password. For that, what I have to do is, first command was Maven minus EMP, Amir, the master password. I got the encrypted password. Now I need the encrypted password for this particular text over here, repo password. For that, I will do Maven minus EP, encrypted password, not encrypted master password. Now this is an encrypted password created using this master password. So anybody who wants to use this encrypted password should have my master password file. So that file should not go to anybody. Even if I take this settings file and share it with someone, they will not be able to run this because they will not be able to make a head or tail of it unless and until I give this settings security file to them. I will stop here. You'll have to watch my recording. This might not be very clear, but there are only two commands. One is minus EMP. The other one is minus EP. EMP is encrypted master password. EP is encrypted password. You have to create the master password first, store it into your settings security file using this standard over here. And once your settings file is created, only then you'll be able to generate your encrypted password. So just for the sake of it, right? I never tried doing it myself, but let's try to do something fancy. I'll try to do as if this file does not exist. And I will try to see if the encrypted password works. Technically, it should not work because, yeah, there you go. So it says there's no master password. Because there's no master password, you cannot generate encrypted password. So I was guessing that is true, but just wanted to prove it to you. Only if the encrypted master password is there, then only you'll be able to create the sorry. All right. Waiting over here for any questions. Any questions? No?
No, Samir, I'm good so far.
Okay. Distribution management. Distribution management. So distribution management technically goes in your, I usually like to put it in my enterprise bill of material or enterprise form, basically, not bill of material, where I would be able to define where the artifact should be deployed when you run the Maven deploy command, MVN deploy command. Okay. If you see here, it basically tells you if repository and snapshot repository. Okay, we cannot really do anything about it right now because we do not have a remote repository. We haven't looked at JFrog or Nexus at the moment, right? So we technically cannot use it. But assume, just as a picture here, assume that this is your laptop and this is your remote repository, which is like JFrog. When you do a Maven clean deploy or Maven deploy file, I have already shown you, but we did not demonstrate it because we don't have JFrog at the moment. If you want to do a Maven clean deploy, so let's revise a bit. Okay, when you do a Maven compile, it compiles a local code. When you do a Maven clean package, it packages and keeps it into your target folder. When you do a Maven clean install, it compiles, it packages and keeps in your target folder, and also takes it and put it into your .m2 repository folder. That's what install is. When you do a Maven clean deploy, it compiles, it packages, keeps it into a target folder, it takes it from target, puts it up into your .m2 repository folder, and then it takes up from the .m2 repository folder and puts it up onto the JFrog Artifactory, or whatever is a remote, basically. How does it know what is a remote? It needs to know, right? Where is the remote? That is defined by defining your distribution management. As easy as that. We cannot see it right now, but when we have a remote, we will see it. Any question on distribution management? Distribution management is only required when you want to push it and when you want to run a command like Maven clean deploy or Maven deploy file command to deploy it to the remote. And when we were using Maven deploy file command, if you remember, we have defined a URL. That's what the URL is. And in deploy file, you define the URL using this parameter over here. But in a normal Maven deploy command, you have to deploy it using, you have to define it using this URL over here. See this URL over here? Come on, where's the distribution management? This is not distribution management. Here, you define it using here, like this. I don't know why they are doing it as download URL. It should not be download URL. It is this repository and snapshot repository. If you are doing a snapshot, Maven clean deploy of a snapshot, where should it deploy? And if you're doing a Maven clean deploy of a release build, then where should it deploy? That's what this is basically, repository and snapshot repository. And then you have a URL where to deploy it to. If you want to do a JFrog specific Maven distribution management, you should be able to see that. Here, this is a JFrog specific distribution management repository name and then the URL. I always suggest know the concept. Don't try to learn how does it look? Because you can always find Google for it. Know the concept. You should know that I want to deploy something to the remote. I need to know the URL. And if I need to know the URL, I also need to know what is the user ID and password. If you really look at this ID over here, central, this ID should be matching the server ID in your settings.xml file. That's what this ID is. You could very well ask me, where is the user ID and password? It is not over here, but it is following the same standard as this guy over here, where you provide the URL and then you provide the repo ID. This repo ID should match the ID, the server ID in your settings.xml file, where your credentials are defined. So if you go to settings.xml file, you have your ID defined, and then you have your credentials defined. Okay, it's the exact same pattern, nothing differs. So Mansa, distribution management, is that clear to you?
Yes, Samir.
Okay. Plugin, no, I don't want to do it today because there are so many more plugins that I want to explore. EPOM, also, let's not do it today. It is very, very close to what EBOM is. The only difference is in EPOM, it is used as a parent to your parent POM. So for me, my parent POM will be this one. But in here, I would define a parent. I will define a parent. And then define the group ID. Whatever the group ID is. Artifact ID. And version. Okay. So why is this required? All the enforcer plugin, the plugin management system, whatever is over here, and a lot of other stuff, right? A lot of governance related stuff, except the dependency versions. Dependency versions are done by the EBOM, but everything else that is governance related could be a EPOM, and you could always say you'll get everything that you need from governance perspective from your EPOM, all your plugin version, so on and so forth, you know, your manifest rules, which we haven't really looked at because when we look at assembly plugin, we'll take a look at that, will all come from this parent. That's what it. In terms of installing the POM XML, it's exactly the same command as what is over here. The only thing is instead of dependency management in it, you'll have much more in it. So Jyoti, you have a better hand. You can go ahead and look at the enterprise POM, what I have created for FIS. You'll get a fair idea about it.
So can we use both EPOM and EBOM in the same?
Yes, you
message?
will use both EPOM and EBOM. The reason is EPOM is what you get using the parent action. EBOM is what you get by defining a type POM and scope import, like how you've done this here. EBOM is only for managing your external dependencies. That's why it's called bill of material. That means it is managing your external dependency versions. And EPOM is enterprise POM, which basically brings you as a part of inheritance because it's a parent. It gives you inheritance of all the other plugins which we saw. For example, especially enforcer plugin. You want to enforce certain things across projects. Everybody should be enforced for it. So instead of giving that enforcer in each and every POM file, you define it in your enterprise POM and you'll tell everybody that you should be inheriting from my POM. That's your enterprise POM. Make sense? Okay. Time for questions. No questions?
Because of that mirror section in the settings.xml file,
Uh-huh.
so cache is formed in the remote repository.
Sorry, this is your settings.xml file. What do you want me to look at?
The concept. So because of that mirror, only remote repository is able to store the dependencies.
I'm not understanding the question, Mansa. Was it Mansa?
Yes, it's Jyoti. Jyoti.
Jyoti. Okay, Jyoti, tell me.
Um,
I'm not able to understand the question. Your settings.xml file is where you can define your a lot of things we saw, right? It is not only the remote repositories thing. It can define your plugin groups. It can define your proxies. It can also define servers wherein you define your IDs and credentials, the user ID and the password. It need not be only of remote repository. It can be remote repository for Maven artifacts. It can be remote repository for your Docker images. There could be several things over here. So this is just one of the things that settings.xml file does. Settings.xml file is a common file across project for you in your local, like how your local M2 repository is. That way, there's only one settings.xml file. POM files, that could be several POM files. And every project will have a POM file, maybe one file, maybe hundreds of files per project. So now you can ask me the question, what you want to ask.
Mirror concept.
Sorry?
Mirror concept.
Mirror
Yeah.
concept is basically what it's saying is, I have my laptop or developers have their own laptops. I don't want developers to go to each and every remote repository separately. If you have to go to each and every remote repository separately, there is a section called repositories. So we haven't seen that, but if you search for Maven, or maybe in here itself, it should be there in the mirror. Let me see. Where was the mirror? No. Okay. So if you see here, you can define a section called repositories like this in a pom.xml file, and you can define what is the ID and what is the URL. And for that ID, if it's a secured server, you can define your ID in your settings.xml file and the username and the password. Okay. So for each and every one, developers can define. For Red Hat, this is the URL you go to. For Maven Central, this is the URL you go to. For Sonatype, this is the URL you go to. But when you don't want that to happen, what you do is you basically create a mirror section in your settings file, and you say all the calls to the external world should always go through this mirror, and this mirror may or may not have a cache. Technically they do, but if they don't, so in your case, whoever is managing your JFrog, you basically will reach out to them and say, hey, you know what? I want to bring a dependency from XYZ repository, and that repository is not tied as a remote repository in your JFrog. Can you please tie it up? Understood? Not understood?
Yeah. Yes. So can we consider these three boxes as the central repositories?
These three boxes, one of them will be Maven Central. They all three will not be Maven Central. It's not only Maven Central, right, which hosts Maven repositories. So if you go and look at Maven repo here, not this. Let's say Spring Maven repo. Let's go here. When you go to Maven repository over here, and when you click on one of them, you would see that this is being served by GitHub Spring project. Okay, and over here, there are many who actually give that repository. Or let's search for a different one. Basically, let's say common plan 3. So if you see here, this is being served by Central, but this is served by Red Hat GA14. This is being served by Red Hat EA2. This is being served by ICMP5. So there are 3 different remote repositories that are available for you to pick up from. Okay, this is a more advanced topic. If you don't understand it, it's fine. But technically, you should know it's not one remote. There can be, even when you go to JFrog, right, and go to one of the remote repos and see they'll be connected to so many other remote repositories. The virtual repository in JFrog. So go to virtual repository in JFrog. Jyoti, especially for you because others cannot see it. Go to virtual repo. and you'll see that it is connected to more than one real repositories, and some of them will be remote. It will be mentioned remote colon or something like that. Okay, what next? What is the next question? Are you still there? Are you guys able to hear me? Are you able to hear me?
Yeah, yes, Samir.
Did you lose me sometimes in between?
No.
It says internet connection is unstable. Okay.
Yeah, looks like airplane mode was on.
All right. I will stop
Yeah.
recording because